You're watching the Squad Creators Podcast. If you haven't subscribed, make sure you subscribe. My guys are doing some big things, good things. They're bringing you guys a lot of information, and you subscribing don't cost you nothing. So get it done. It's been your boy Stan Banks from T-Shirt Side Hustle. Peace.
Welcome. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you at, man. West Coast, East Coast. It's morning over here, man. Breakfast time. But welcome to the Squad Creators Podcast, episode 78.
78.
Man, I'm Sig Paris, the one half.
And I'm the other half, Mike Tees.
Go ahead, brother.
We would like the guest to introduce himself.
Yo, what's up, everybody? And thank you, too, for having me. But my name is Jon Phenom. On the internet, they call me the clothing brand mentor.
So, man, let's get to it. So, the clothing brand mentor, man, can you tell us some of your beginnings and end with what exactly is a clothing brand mentor?
Right. So the moniker, I was looking for a very simple, right, like proposition where people understand very quickly what it is that I do. So let me back up for y'all. I started working professionally in apparel in 2000. So what I always say is like name on the business card is when I started, not like years grinding. So prior to that, I had actually around that college time, I had started a little t-shirt line and I packaged it. I polybagged it. I had like hanger tags. And so the presentation was important to me. And to be honest, there's another story there, but that's literally how I got my first job. I mean, the guy that owned the skate company where I first started at in 2000 was bugged out on the care and detail that I put into this t-shirt brand. And I wasn't looking for it to go further. It was a vehicle for me to learn Adobe Illustrator, Photoshop, and just get product out there like a living portfolio piece. So it did its thing. And in that year, I was doing my first cut and sew, and so the company was actually a skate shoe. So my apparel was an accessory to that, which is good because I had no idea what I was doing. I mean, they put a lot of faith in me. So I made some mistakes, but I made some wins as well where they made money. You know what I'm saying? So since 2000, went from designer to senior designer to creative director. And then the last 3 jobs in-house all had director attached to it, to the point where I was running like a $4 million brand for my boss. So these last 22 years, just every aspect of apparel development and running a brand.
Wow. Let me before we go all the way deep in. How did you know that this was going to be your career field? Because it's almost like you came out like, this is what I'm doing. This is it.
100%. So like in high school, I did a lot of things. You know what I'm saying? I was motivated. I did a lot of theater. I had a rap group. I rapped with another dude. And
hold on, you continue. What was the rap group? Tell us. Can we know the name?
So we went by Commonwealth.
Okay.
Yeah. We had a couple names. There was oh my gosh! Shout out to any of my boys that hear this. That's so funny. They're all dads now. But there was a group name called Subdivision. No one's ever asked me this. I rarely bring it up. But then, so I rapped. I was like president of my art club. Wow. And I actually wrestled. I was a hardcore wrestler, so I was an athlete as well. I was like ranked in the state of California on my weight class.
Oh, wow.
I was motivated, and then my whole search, like before committing to college, right? I was like, well, so we got to figure out what we want to do and then major in that. And so ever since pretty much senior year, I'm like, well, what do I want to do? I know I can put a lot of things together. I could communicate well. And then I met this cat named Alyasha Orkamore. And Alyasha, big shout out to Alyasha, man. He's like a living legend in apparel. Especially in those days, like late 90s, he was a bit of a founding father design wise. So Mecca was out there. Fat Farm was out there. These are all like just OG brands.
LA was hot back then too.
100%. Yeah. When you guys watch this in the playback in the comments, add your favorite brands from back in the day. But Alyasha had moved from New York to California. And so DC Shoes, when it was not owned by Quicksilver, had 2 owners, right? Mm-hmm. And those 2 owners had three companies. So they had a skateboard company, they had the shoes, DC shoes, and they had drawers, apparel, and Dub outerwear. And so the outerwear was snowboard gear. So Ollie was the creative director of the apparel side, and I met him. I met him in '96, and it changed my whole trajectory. Like I came into the office, and it was like three designers in there that they were playing hip hop. They had graffiti on canvases, but it was in like a corporate. I pulled up to a corporate office.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is the craziest thing I've ever seen. I don't know. And I was like, I don't know what they do here. I don't know how they do it, but I can do this. Like I could do this job. Like I wouldn't have to grow up,
Period.
Yeah.
So that's some people, man, people are born to do things, man. It sounds like this is what you were born to do. Can you explain some of the duties that you had, like specifically as a director?
Sure. Yeah, that's a good question. So depending on the hierarchy of where you're at, so for a creative director, traditionally, because that term gets used a little more loosely today. So sometimes content creators will say I'm a creative director, and so specifically in the term of apparel, right? Like ready to wear men's brands where I've worked at. I'm overseeing all of the aesthetics of the brand, and then making sure everything that comes into contact with that, especially anything that's put out to the public, is on brand, right? And so you're protecting whatever standards you set, everything down to if you have a company Pantone color for the logo type thing. And then in your day-to-day, your regular cycle of running a brand is there. So that each process has a cycle. So trending and research, and then design, right? And then once you pick your winners, you say, this is what we're going to put out because we believe it's hot, right? Via consensus, and that, the sales guys are involved with that. And there's many discussions that happen there. And then production or mass production. And then, then you go out and then you send it out to retail. So overseeing that entire process is very involved for the creative director.
Wow.
That's dope, man. So I want to ask, you mentioned you were art director, head of the art in school. So what's your background with the actual art beyond the high school?
So I drew a lot, like when I was in high school, and then I guess I would be considered an early adapter for graphic design, right? So I always throw this around because people forget, but so I began learning to use Adobe Illustrator in like the late 90s.
That's crazy.
So back then, it was super expensive to own a Macintosh, and they looked like crazy, like the old television sets. They don't look sexy like they look now, right?
Yeah.
And it was not cool. They used to throw the word computer nerd around. So people would be like, "Oh, you're a computer nerd." Sounds crazy now. It sounds crazy. I'm bringing y'all back.
I'm loving it.
And so actually so what I did was I decided I want to become a designer. I would go to the trade shows, right, that happen in Vegas for fall and spring, and I would hustle to get out there. My brother thought I was crazy. One time I got out there with like literally, I think I had like $45 in my pocket. I didn't even have money for a hotel room. I ended up crashing on the floor of someone's. It was crazy. But I would be out there because I'm like, the people who I'm going to work for are going to be in Las Vegas twice a year.
Right.
And so I met the designers and head designers and art directors, creative directors of the brands I loved. Yeah. And so they all told me, you got to learn Adobe Illustrator and Photoshop. And I was like, oh, I have to learn a computer program. And so I did a deep dive to it. I took courses at my community college for Adobe Illustrator. And I did it because I couldn't afford a computer, and I would use their computer lab. And
money.
And I was hustling a t-shirt line. So while the teacher would be teaching, I would be on my computer designing designs. And it's crazy because the students next to me will be like, how'd you do that? How'd you do that? and I'm like, oh, I'm just, I'm just masking the word here. You have to put it in outline so it's not a font, turn it into a shape, all of that stuff. And so, yeah, I took a deep dive. So by the time I got that first job in 2000, I was I mean, I thought I knew it well, but I didn't. I was relatively versed in Illustrator and then and Photoshop, but yeah, now yeah, I could I've done so many hours in both programs.
Yeah.
Wow.
I can imagine, man. That's dope. I want to hear about your brand. What was the brand idea, like your first brand launched?
So the brand that I launched in 2007, around there, so it was a signature brand. So it was called Jon Phenom. So what people on the internet don't know is, before like the internet and my persona,
Mm-hmm.
like Jon Phenom, I guess the the YouTube guy. They say, oh, you're on YouTube.
Yeah.
I was known as Jon Phenom, the handmade denim guy. So
Handmade denim.
yeah,
Yeah.
at one point I was making handmade denim at roughly around $300 a pair.
Wow.
Yeah, and so early when I first moved to Los Angeles, like that was my vehicle.
Okay.
So when I moved to LA, I did a solo group show, sort of, where I hand sewed 9 denim jackets and 9 denim bottoms, and a bunch of these artists that were hot around the world. My best friend at the time was like a marketing dude, and he's a genius. He was like, "Yo, we're just gonna send this. I'm gonna find their addresses. We're gonna send it to them." So it's the equivalent now of doing collabs with people that were super viral. But this is before the internet.
Mm-hmm.
So we got artists from Hong Kong, New York, here in LA, obviously Canada, Paris, and we found the hottest artists at the time, and I sent them one of the pieces, the denim pieces.
Mm-hmm.
I left a note. There was not a letter. It was just a card. And it said, hey, I'm a huge fan of your work. My name is Jon Phenom. I'm an artist in Los Angeles. I would love for you to be a part of my art show. Do whatever you want to this denim piece, and I'll pay for the shipping for it to come back. And every single one of the pieces came back. So rather than trying to email them and say, hey, would you do my show, all of that, no conversation. They're either going to send it with the art or send it back without the art. And every single person did it. Yeah, a lot of big people, like Jeff Staple was a part of that. A-Life, New York was a part of that. Andy Howell was a part of that. A lot of OGs, a lot of really big people. So in any case, to answer your question, in 2007, that was an extension. Like I felt like I had to do a premium denim brand.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what I launched in 2007. And as y'all know, the mortgage crunch hit very heavy at that time, and it was rough. It was a big learning lesson.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Handmade denim. So I got to go back on this. I'm sorry. This might be a silly question, but what's one of the process of hand making denim? I know you said you were sewing pieces together, but
yeah. So it's like anything else. Like if you go to fashion school, I mean, it's the pattern, and then you put everything together. So it's like a recipe. There's all the different pieces, right? There's the yoke in the back, the leggings, like where the inseam comes together. It's all the different pieces, the pockets, the back pockets. And so what happened was, I never went to fashion school, right? Which is funny because later I became a speaker and then a guest judge at so many colleges. But my mom had a sewing machine in the garage, and it was broken. So I took a look at the motor and I fixed it. And I was like, I had been working on the computer, and I was like, yo, I design clothing. I don't ever mess with fabrics or anything like that. So basically, I was like, I started putting myself on projects, and then I started getting bored. I would look at things and say, I can make that. Not buying a pattern, I would just try to make it. Back when we had in the grocery stores, they would say paper or plastic.
Yeah.
Those paper bags, I would tape them together to use that as pattern paper. I didn't know that buy pattern paper. I didn't know what that was. It's funny. Like any traditional tailor would laugh at what I was doing. So anyways, I was like, what's the craziest thing I can make with a sewing machine at home? And I was like, dude, that'd be crazy if I made a pair of denim. So I got some really lightweight denim. It was probably like honestly like 8-ounce denim, and I bought it in a roll, and I was like, yeah, let me try to make some. So the very first pair I bought a pattern, and I did it, and it came out good, but it was like a 60s pattern. So the waist was real high. And so I did those paper bags. I rolled them out and I made my own pattern. I was like, oh, I'm going to make it baggy here. And then I was like, oh, wait, I could do whatever I want. Like I could make the shape of the pocket, whatever I want. I can use whatever fabric I want. And so I was like, oh, wait, once I put this together, it's just a pair of jeans. So let me do whatever I want. And I would go to events, right? We would go to events to network and meet others. And they'd be like, yo, what jeans are those? And I'd be like, they're Jon Phenoms. And then the first dude to ask me for a pair was an editor of a magazine. And I couldn't say no to him, but I was a little nervous. But they're Jon Phenom.
Yeah. That's dope, man. So in that moment, man, what was your feeling? What'd you feel like in that moment?
In that moment, I was nervous. I actually told him. So he was like, this is the second time I ran into him, and I was wearing the jeans at this event they were doing. And so he was like, dude, you have to make me a pair of handmade jeans. And he's the editor of the magazine. So back then, that is the equivalent for viral, right? Like, you gotta give me some ink in the magazine, some pages. So something, you got to give me a shout out, something.
Right.
So I was like, I was nervous though. So I said, you know what? I'm going to think of a price that's too high so he won't do it. And I said, I'll do it for, I think I said $275, $250. And he goes, I got a checkbook in the car. I'll write you a check right now.
Hell yeah.
And I was like, oh damn, I didn't think you were gonna say that. So I was like, you know what? Let me get your waist and your inseam. Let me make the pants, and then you give me the money like 2 weeks after wearing the pants. I want to make sure the production is on point. So I took a lot of care. And that was, and then he was the editor of a magazine. So it was crazy after that. I got so many emails. It was like, hey, I'm a friend of so-so. And like, hey, you make the handmade jeans. How does this work? I'll send you the deposit right now. I'll send you 100%. The lists were crazy. So also at that time, I was cutting my teeth being a designer in LA. So, bro, it was crazy. I would work 9 to 6, designing spring and fall lines. Go to my little apartment in Koreatown here in LA, and then I would sew till 2 or 3 in the morning.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was crazy.
So man, that's crazy just to hear that story. I sew, man, and it's been a little minute since I touched my sewing machine, and I have a sewing machine in my garage. But my wife is trying to get me back into it. I'm gonna get back into the sewing and stuff, and this is like motivating me right here because I got some ideas and some stuff I want to create from scratch. And this is like real motivation, like just to hear this story, man. And so I wanted to ask, like you said, you created the jeans and the jackets with a sewing machine. Did you ever use a serger back then, or were you just doing it all with a sewing machine?
Yeah. So this is funny. I own an industrial one now that I don't really touch, but the funny thing is I just used a consumer, like one you could buy at like Walmart, but I would get like an expensive one. And another thing is I couldn't have an industrial sewing machine in my little apartment in Koreatown. So like preparing for that art show and then working on other people's denim, I would burn the motor of these consumer sewing machines.
Oh, yeah.
So I would just run through them and I'd be like, that's cool. Toss it like not like $300, $400. I'm like, yeah, let me get another. I probably had one on deck, like ready to go, but it's hilarious. It's hilarious that I mean, the key is I would use lightweight denim, and then doing it here in downtown LA. So I would work, and during lunch eventually there was a guy who would get remnants of big orders of denim. And so I had every Italian denim, like Japanese denim. Yeah. And he would have remnants. It would be like a couple yards. So I would just come through and he'd give me the craziest deal. And I'd walk back to my car to my work with a huge roll over my shoulder, pop it in the whip, and I'd go back to work.
Yeah, man. So like with those remnants, man, did you do like some like patchwork type of stuff, or what type of?
I did a lot of things that were like I guess experimental or whatever, just because you could do whatever. So like eventually, like when I would, I guess, kind of get commissioned to do the denim for someone, I would say, hey, what do you want? And everyone would say like go crazy,
Mhm.
because I would tell them the scope. Like I could do the back pocket out of a corduroy, or like it could
Yeah,
be anything you want. And
yeah,
so most of the time they'd just be like, yeah, just go crazy. So what I would do is do details that sometimes no one would see, right? So I would say, Seek, give me a quote from one of your favorite songs or favorite artists, right? And I
mhm.
might put that quote inside the pant leg where
Oh,
only they would see it when they pull it in and out, or I put it in the pocket bags.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
dope.
So just little touches like that.
Wow. Hey
Let me
John,
ask you one.
where does where does the love for you creating fashion meet clothing brand mentor? Like how did that transition happen?
Um, that's a good question. So, I'm just even the whole YouTube channel is funny. It relates like I mean, because when I started a long time ago. It's not like one of these things where like, oh, I got 25,000 subscribers in like I don't know. And some people can do that in like a year or whatever. I started my YouTube channel because I'm the dude that everyone would ask. So someone would contact me and say, "Hey, I'm Mike T's homie. I want to start a clothing line," and they said I should call you, and I would be like, "Yeah, what's up? Like, what are your questions?" And I would be working because I'm like, it's so funny because at the ISS show I had this conversation with a T-shirt help desk, right? And
Mhm.
because he comes from industry, but on the East Coast,
Mm-hmm.
so we have the same experience. But like in the industry, people are really guarded. They didn't want to tell nobody anything. So like company to company, because I was good socially, like I met a lot of people, so
Mhm.
like no one would give up contacts. But if
Mm-hmm.
I called, someone might say, hey, do you have a wovens guy that I could price check with? And I would tell them, I'll give you whatever contact we have. But it was like pulling teeth, it's like a guarded secret. So when people would ask me, I would just be like, yeah, what do you want to know? Because to be honest, some of my initial thought was many of these people are not going to make it anyway. It's just so
Mhm.
difficult. And so I would just give them my idea of what they didn't know. So the beginning of the channel was like 10 to 20 questions that were frequently asked. So
Mm-hmm.
then someone would call me and say, hey, I'm Mike T's homie. I'm trying to start a line. And I would say, hey, go to this link. It's a YouTube channel. Check out those 20 videos. And then when you have any other questions that aren't there, definitely call me or text me and I'll answer those questions.
Wow.
So I want to. You said that you were talking to Gary Aljanay, T-shirt help desk that day.
Yeah.
That's when we met. We pulled up on you, man. I know you was like, this guy crazy. And I want to tell the story like so. Him and T-shirt help desk are sitting there talking. We pulled up like, hey, I'm Seek, this Mike, and I'm like, man, I'm gonna be bold, man. I need y'all on my show, man. When you coming on my show? Like,
Hey, respect, dude. Respect.
man, because like it like that, like I want to talk about that little mixer. That mixer was so humbling to meet people like you, Gary, and John Santos, yo tall brother.
Cassandra, yeah, Cassandra.
Taller brother. Nah, I'm being funny, but like it was really humbling to be in that realm. The energy was so good. Everybody was in a good mood. Everybody was having fun. Um, just there was no type of tension or anything, man. We met some really good people there. You being one of those people we met, and I just want to ask you, man, how important are those type of events and the trade shows and stuff? How important is that to this industry and to the people in it?
Oh man, I'm so glad you asked that. Like networking for me has always been something that's super important.
Mm-hmm.
And then obviously with everything that happened in 2020, that's difficult. So we saw what it felt to not have that as an option.
Sure.
But I've always known one of my strongest assets is when I'm in person. So I'll always take speaking engagements. If there's a place where people are gonna be at that are my colleagues, I want to be there. I mean, way back, even way back when I was known as Jon Phenom, the handmade denim guy. I mean, a lot of the jobs that I got were from people saying, "Hey, you should call this guy." And then when they meet with me, they're like, "Oh, this guy's the real deal." But it's important, and I'll say specifically at the Bella Canvas event, dude, meeting Gary from T-Shirt Help Desk, which I've been a fan of forever, and then us when you guys met us, when you came up on us, we were sharing stories of industry. So you know, you go deep enough, we know mutual people, because I did a ton of work for brands in the East Coast back in the day, for sure. But he can relate that way. And then that was my first time meeting John Santos. Big shout out to John Santos, right, from the ground up, right? Like I mean, you can't be in our space and John's not in the algorithm right next to your videos. So, and yeah, for him, immediately, I'm talking about in the first 10 minutes, he was like, "Yo, I have you in mind for this content. You know, I'm doing this. I want you to be a judge on this." And I'm like, anything you were saying, I was like, "Bro, it's done. It's done." So,
man.
I feel the same synergy. You know, it's important. So, so for people that are watching that are brands, like it's important. And I'll tell you this. I'll tell you this, because you're like, "Oh, I'm crazy for coming up to y'all when you're talking." That's what you got to do. But let's be honest. If you guys emailed me or DM me, that's a different conversation, right? Because I met you guys as people. I heard your story, and I'm like, Def gonna be on the podcast. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
So for you and the upcoming brands and shops, it's important for y'all.
Oh yes.
And it's like being in that room. Like honestly, me and Mike Teaser, we was the smallest fish in that pond.
Yeah, for sure.
But you know, last show, Cassandra Smith said, and networking, the key to networking is just being in a room. We got in that room, man, and we met some amazing people, man, made some relationships, man. And again, brother, I thank you for coming on, but I'm stuck on this handmade denim, man.
Yeah, that's it.
I'm inspired by that, man. Like, I'm gonna ask you this question. So if the Jon Phenom of 2007 never picked up that, went in mom's garage and grabbed that sewing machine and fixed it, where do you think you would be now?
Well, so that whole chapter in my life, to be honest, doesn't have as much towards what happened with who I am now. I mean, I actually think the beginning of that was me uploading the FAQ, right, the frequently asked questions to my first channel. But what that era did, I mean, like, it was a great education in fabrics and actual creating the actual garments. So because my knowledge prior to that was zero. I didn't go to fashion school, like I said. And so my understanding of when I'm designing the garments, the blueprints of them in Adobe Illustrator, and I'm making a call out, you know, even down to like, oh, this fabrication should be a slub cotton, right? Or this should be like a 10-ounce twill, right? I know what that feels like. And so there's that aspect. But the biggest aspect, to answer your question, is I've always been entrepreneurial. You know what I mean? And I won't say this in front of like an art department if I'm in charge of an art department, because most of the people I hire are going to be designers. So they look at life differently, right? They look at life in colors and they imagine things. That's part of their brilliance. But what I say to more of my business colleagues is sometimes I feel like a businessman disguised as a designer. And doing the handmade denim was both creative and it was very logistical in terms of business. So, I mean, I'm making custom product for people, which a lot of people can attest to here watching your channel. But it was it was business, it was customer service, right? It was the very, this is like web 1.0, but it was like keeping the website up to date, which was very difficult back then. And so that was the education. I've always been entrepreneurial. So it definitely helped me in my push that way, because instead of being another apparel designer in LA, right? Well, if I go out to the clubs back then, I'm not special. I go to the club and I'm like, oh, what do you do? I'm like, oh, I design clothing. They're like, oh, I know the assistant men's designer at Gucci or something like. But to separate myself from everyone else, that definitely did it. You know, like being the handmade denim guy, that definitely got me a ton of meetings. the denim editor at Complex at the time was like, hey, we want to run a feature on you. So just new opportunities.
That's dope, man.
Wow.
That's really dope. So what were some of those frequently asked questions that you got, and can you like go in depth on some, at least one or two?
Yeah, sure. Let me go with a tough one. So, or that's tough to answer, but one of the biggest questions is how much money does it take to start a clothing line?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
for better or worse, my answer is it depends, right? It depends because I've been on contract projects where they had over 200,000, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll work with people that are like, I have my regular job. I want this to pop off, but I don't know, $6,000 to kind of put towards it or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. And so, obviously, if you have 200,000, that's a different ballpark. But some of it is not different. You know what I mean? Some of it is the same equation. Like roughly speaking, without knowing more information, you're going to spend 70% of your budget on production on apparel, unless now we're in 2022 where there's DTG and there's companies like Printful and Printify, and then a ton of companies that are in their footsteps, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so there's zero risk up front of having inventory, right? You don't have to make 80 shirts in the very, very beginning, right?
Yeah.
But you're gonna pay for them housing and then fulfilling the product. So in the end of the day, once you get proof of concept, right? Like let's say you go with Printful or whatever, and you go, oh wow, this shirt is actually selling. At some point, you're gonna say, well, I'm losing a lot of money with them doing it, so then I should go to a printer and make it and hold inventory, and that's where your 70% of your money is going to go. But someone has a small budget. On my channel, I always say you need proof of concept, and that's kind of a sliding definition as well. But if you feel like this is going good, let me put more money into it. But all the money from the profit should be going into it anyway. And so you just keep going until you keep doing more drops and more drops, and then it gets bigger and bigger, right?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So what are some ways you suggest a person to get proof of concept?
Oh, that's a great question. What are some ways people get proof of concept? Okay, so the tough part of it is everything's on the plate, right? Like marketing alone is probably one of the biggest time consuming things. Because the typical person on my YouTube channel has more time than money, which works good for marketing, right? Like we're doing this podcast, right? Like this is an entity that you guys have interviewed some really great people on here, and it's storytelling. So this is great for your guys' brand, right? But imagine how much work. I mean, you guys, I don't have to tell how much work to do this, and you guys are in two different cities.
Yeah.
So if I just start mentioning marketing, that's already so much work, right? Like Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, depending on what outlets you're going to do. I mean, you have to get organized and say, okay, there's 12 months in the year. How much time can I devote if you have a full-time job to putting these posts together? How much can I do in advance, right? So there's so much that goes into it. So that's just marketing. Sorry, I need to turn off my notifications.
That's all right.
Oh, good.
So marketing is one piece, but overall, when we talk about proof of concept, it's just sales, right? Because if you put out 5 shirts and they're all went wood, right? They're staying in your bedroom or your basement, in your garage, and your wife is like, what are we gonna do with all these t-shirts? And they're not moving. It's a problem. You got to pivot, right? Or in tech, we say you got to pivot. But what are you gonna do if you already dropped, I don't know, let's just say like $3,000 on those shirts, and you just thought they were gonna bang, but they didn't? It's a problem. So there's then I talk about marketing, and then but everything has to really work, right? And then you also have a thermostat to say, dude, if once I hit 10 grand, I'm not gonna go on with this. So a lot of what I try to do is pre-strategy to say, hey, these are all the places that you have to spin. You know what I'm saying? It's like saying my car won't move. And then I'm like, well, what is it? They're like, I don't know. It just won't move. I got to go into the engine and say, okay, these are all the parts of the engine. It can literally be 5 or 6 different things.
Right.
And those things had different things. But for your original answer to your question is proof of concept is just money. It's saying, hey, we sold these shirts, or we sold 60% of these shirts. That's pretty good. I think I could do a new design that hits better. And then now you have data, right? You know who bought it. So maybe you have a repeat customer in them, right? And now you have content to fuel some of the marketing to keep going. So you're like, I deem it's safe to keep going here, and then maybe put more money into it.
It makes sense. Fellas, we've hit the 30-minute mark. We actually surpassed it. We gotta take this ad from our sponsors. As soon as I can click on it.
Authorized Siser dealer. I sell Siser. Oracal is my other big brand that is well known. I have all the colors of Oracal, 12-inch, 24-inch. I have my own branded decal called Galaxy. It's the competition to Oracal. I carry Oracal. Metamark, probably the best decal there is. Hands down, it's matte, but it's fantastic. I carry sublimation products. That's the future where we're growing right now is sublimation, and we have our own line of glitter for like tumblers, resin. So that's our other big one. Stardust glitter coats, the other big one we're growing right now is for online presence and in stores. The molds, the glitters, all the sublimation products. I mean, that stuff changes every day and adds new things. I mean, it's.
So if somebody order, what's your turnaround time typically for an order?
Typically within 24 hours.
Welcome back. Make sure y'all tap in to Vinyl Supply Unlimited. Use that Squad Creators 10 at the checkout to get 10% off your entire order. We are back with Jon Phenom, and he is dropping some gems on us. This is episode 78. Jon, can we get into YouTube? You have an amazing following on YouTube. And I remember you mentioning something in the speech like it's very hard for people to, acquire subscribers or even people to come back, and you seem to do it effortlessly. Can you share that with us?
Oh, I appreciate you saying that. I'm glad I make it look effortless. Yeah, it's a lot of work, and so definitely, because I have a following, definitely if someone finds out I'm a YouTuber, everyone is like, I'm thinking about starting a channel. Or they'll say, my friends say I should start a channel. And out of all the social media routes, I know that YouTube is a long road, right? It's a long road. So like you can post, you could post like 50 videos and still not get any traction. And it can be very daunting. And if you look back on the story of any of your favorite YouTubers, many of them will say that the channel you're watching or the channel that blew up was like their third channel. So quick note on YouTube, it's a long route, right? It's a big investment, and very counter culture to the way we are, where it's like a click a button, society. There's many times you won't see results. You could go a year, you go 2 years and not see. Even Mr. Beast talks about some of his early channels and stuff. But I'm glad I make it look effortless. I mean, I told you guys before we went on. I mean, there's a team that helps me with my edits. You know what I mean? And so, I try to keep the main thing, which is the ideation of the content, and then working with my partners. If anything, if I work with sponsors and that I'm aligned with, and making sure the content is good. I'm always trying to, you're your own producer, as you guys know. Yeah.
Most definitely.
And I want to hold on before you say what you're going to say. Y'all see the type of stuff this brother's talking about, man. We need to get his channel, bro. Like, his numbers don't reflect the gems and jewels and free game he's giving away, man. Y'all think you got a friend to go tap in with him. Like, this is it's crazy. Like 25K is nothing to laugh at or smirk at, but the stuff you drop, you should be way higher than 25K, man. Like we need to figure out YouTube, y'all listening, man, get this man out there. What y'all doing, man?
Oh man, it's funny you say that. I was telling y'all. So Britt, my homie, she goes by Doctor Fashion on YouTube. She's 100 something. She has a ton of followers, and we collab all the time. And she's like, I don't understand why you don't have more followers. And we had met speaking on a panel at Google back in 2017. Chloe Couture was on that panel.
Wow.
Chloe Couture, when she closed her channel, she had like 7 million. At the time when we spoke, I feel like she had 3 million. And so everyone on this panel, this is one of like, I got the email from Google and I was like, is this for real? Like, is this like, I thought it was a joke because the suffix of the email was at Google and they say, hey, we want you to speak at this event. And I was like, that's crazy. Anyways, everyone on that panel, like, I don't know what I had at the time, maybe close to 20,000. And like, I was like, I really need to look at this. But since then, me and Britt have been real tight. But yeah, a lot of my fellow like influencers are like, dude, you should have like 100,000 subs.
Real easy. Easy. So I got Dr. Fashion right here. She had 165.
Nice.
So, Dr. Fashion, if you see this, we need to talk to you too, man. Please, miss.
I'll reach out to Britt. You need to come on this show. I got you.
Yeah, man. So I'm just a young dude right now, right? Or a young lady, and I want to start a brand. I'm limited on money. I have a sewing machine and some creative abilities, man. What do I do? Where do I start?
Okay, so depends on where we're at in the process of the very, very basics of the brand. Obviously, a logo is very important. So when you say in this scenario that you're creating, if you say talented creatively, I'm assuming maybe they can make their own logo and designs. Okay, cool. Okay, so let's get that out of the way because I talk to a lot of people who are like, I can't design. And so I'm like, okay, you're gonna be like outsourcing then a lot. So you should. So for the first step for that person is finding a really good designer that they could freelance and won't flake on them. And then I'll also coach them on communicating well because I've been the designer on the other side. So in this scenario, let's say the person starting is an artist and can do that. Yeah, make sure you have a logo. Let a lot of people see the logo, get their take on it, almost like a focus group. One mistake that some people will make, I'll give you this tidbit when I deep dive, is they're just thinking of a logo in one dimension, right? They're not thinking of it in application. So think of it embossed and debossed on like a zipper pull, right? On a woven label. When it's going to be put in black and white, if you're just added as an entity to an event, if you have an iconic logo, right? And not a word mark, or maybe you have both, you have a logo system, like just make sure it can look well as an embroidery. It can look clean. You got all these crazy, think of the most popular logos. They're all very simple, vector shape, right? Right. So you come in with this crazy logo with all these crazy colors. It's like, you got to translate that into a black and white or a solid, and then think about how it's going to look with as a 3D embroidery on a hat. Just those are just some basics. Anyways, the next thing I would do is etch out your first couple designs way before you're finished with the first 3 designs. Your Instagram handle and all your socials should be set up way before that. In fact, I should have done this first. Anyone comes and talks to me, said, I'm going to start a brand. I'm like, cool. When do you think of launching? If they say, oh, in 6 months, I'm like, get the space for your social media now and start building on it now. Now, when I say that, they're like, wait, I don't have any of my stuff. And I'm like, yeah, but you don't want to have your designs and all of that and have your first post be, buy now, I just launched last night. You'll literally have 0 followers.
Right.
Right. So marketing is such a big thing because marketing really now coincides with sales, right? It's almost the same thing. And the marketing is the storytelling and the sales, right? Because now we could say, swipe up or like link is in the description and it goes straight to your store, right? So the following is in a lot of times more important than your first designs, right? Like,
Right.
so, and then let me answer this question because this is the next question. What do I post if I don't have any stuff? And I'll say, think of it like a magazine or a vlog. Any audience, you should know your demographic and your customer, right? You should know them well if you want to start a clothing company in that audience. So, I mean, it should be the things you like. So post the things you like, right? And then use it as a magazine. You could even have a different name and then change the name right before you start. It depends on what you want to do. But start the channels now so it's populated. I mean, 25 people is 100 times better than 0 people.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. And then launch the 3 designs, see how it does, and then look for proof of concept.
So to double on that, then this is something that you had talked on, when I was going through my research and it seemed to come up a couple of times. How do you know when it's the perfect time to drop?
Great question. So perfect time to drop. I would just do it in advance in terms of putting a calendar together of when, because sometimes, like back in the day, I would work with a lot of companies that would be like, oh, we're going to do a fashion show. And I'm like, all right, I'm not going to say that's a bad idea, but hopefully the funds you're spending on that fashion show doesn't exceed the type of budget you're going to put together for the entire year. Because it should be, there's 12 months in the year. You should have at least 12 things that you could center around your marketing and your brand, right? Like a collab or something, right? So let's say, obviously, if you're good friends with someone who's a professional athlete or an influencer of any type, musician, even an upcoming musician would be a great idea because they're going to say yes, right? And you say, hey, do a collab with my brand, and say they're dropping an EP or album or a single in 6 months. Bam, you got that month, you got that person there. So that's going to be a great drop. You already have content and media around that storytelling. So you got to give people a reason to come back to your handle and check what your guys are doing. And you got to reinvent yourself like every single month. Yeah. And so a good time to drop, this goes with almost the last answer, is you got to coincide that with your marketing efforts and the kind of stories you're trying to tell.
Wow.
Man. So y'all know, man, this brother paid, he gets paid to tell people this. He giving y'all this free game for free, man.
Drop comments, hit emojis, everything. ASAP. These gems right here is something that's going to change your life. And like Zeke just said, and if y'all just look them up, this is not somebody that's in a grocery store telling you how to operate a business. This man has well over 22 years of experience and is very, very headstrong and talented in what he says and speaks to. So tap in immediately.
So before we move on to other questions, man, I mentioned that, man. Tell about your courses. What can we expect from your courses, and how will one get involved?
Yeah. So I needed Clothing Brand Academy for me. That's like my baby in a lot of ways, but I only launched it in 2020, and the reason is I've been so busy directing brands. So the kind of grind that was involved with directing a brand that's like 60 hours a week. You know what I'm saying? Like the year starts and then my mom calls me around October. It's like, you don't even visit me. You haven't called me. And I'm like, I'm so sorry. I worked for one brand where I was flying to China like 4 times a year. Yeah. Right when you come back, there's meetings. Everyone's, hey, our distributor from Germany's in town, so you're going to do dinner or lunch with them, that type of thing. And so also another thing is it remained a novelty, not a novelty, but I was helping people. But when your YouTube channel is at like 7,000 or even 12,000, I'm like, well, what do I do with this? Like it's I mean, to the degree of some of my other colleagues, I'm like, well, this is kind of like nothing really. To average person, there's like a lot, which I love every single one of my subscribers, but yeah, when it started getting close to 20,000, I'm like, okay, I think there's a really good audience here. But also, all the courses and the products on there are like solutions that I talk about. So, like just this morning, someone bought one of my tech packs for a snapback, right? Mm-hmm. And so these tech packs have over 20 years of working in our department. So the type of layers that I have in the Adobe Illustrator tech packs are nasty. Like they have a lot of detail, and I have notes in them, right? So like after directing a lot of art departments, these are all things that I knew to include when I'm if they hire a designer or graphic designer or apparel designer who hasn't, maybe they've seen tech packs differently. So a lot of companies will do it differently. That's one of the first products that I made. And then the courses were obvious. I mean, I had to do that. But starting with t-shirts and hats, that course was a labor of love. I did it, and then I redid the entire thing way before I even launched it. Because there's all this new, and I keep updating it because you guys know at the ISS show, like there's just so many new things that are happening in space that are exciting, but I can't willingly sell someone a course and go, it's not updated. So I update all of them. There's finding a name. And then the most popular one, rightfully so, is the free one, which is pre-launch. And I talk about these things that I would do in consulting where I'm like, you're kind of asking the wrong questions. Let me tell you the questions you're not asking because you don't know about them.
Right.
Pre-launch is like an exploratory where I kind of dissect the anatomy of a clothing line and the kind of things you kind of need to launch a successful clothing brand from the perspective of someone that's run a multi-million-dollar brand.
Yeah, so it's I'm sorry. It's a lot, man. Like just listen to what you're saying. Like so many people want to launch clothing lines, but so many people don't do it right. Like I was just saying, like I have a website where I sell shirts with my designs, but I don't have a clothing line. I don't have a clothing brand. So for someone like myself, how do we get the how do you get the cohesiveness of a brand in your designs? You know what I mean?
Right. So is that design more of a service?
I'm sorry.
Your t-shirts, are they more of a service, or you're just putting out designs that you think are dope?
I just create, man, and
Oh, okay.
create and put out. You know, there's like, like I keep all my colors similar. The cohesiveness of the colors, the cohesiveness of you look at my site, everything is a cohesive color wise, and even stylized, but like there's no, I can't honestly call it a line. You know what I mean?
Right.
So how do you come up with to keep that cohesiveness to make a clothing a bunch of clothing a clothing line or clothing?
Got you. So there's two things I have to say. Number one is to be successful, you don't necessarily need to have a brand. In clothing, I'll give you an example. Me and my former business partner JJ over at Union Prints, big shout out to Union Prints and Couch Curb. We would laugh because we would say some of the biggest successes in terms of t-shirts were not clothing brands. So next door to our business, to our warehouse, these guys started a microbrewery called Booze Brothers. Big shout out to the Booze Brothers.
Booze Brothers.
And so these guys were skaters, but they learned their game at a microbrewery in San Diego, and they decided to just grab a space and start their own. They are massive now. They're distributed. I don't want to say Costco. It might be Costco, but like a major wholesaler. They bought the entire. They ended up leasing the entire building on the other side. Like they're massive, and so their T-shirts, which is an accessory to what they do. I mean, they got into like San Diego, like big accounts that people would die for. So anyways, quick story I wanted to share. Like you don't necessarily have to have a clothing brand. Like if you had a shop and it's like, let's say it's based on like really gimmicky sayings. I mean, that could do 200,000 a year, and then you don't have a brand. More of the brand is people are coming back to the comedy of it, right? Now, on the other side, my other answer is, in a way, see, if you think about it, you're like an artist, and you're doing singles, right? You're dropping on Spotify like every month or every week. You're like, hey, I have a new, I was just messing with this song. Check this. Hope y'all like it. Boom. Right.
I used to do that too.
There you go. Strong connection with music and fashion.
Yeah.
But here's what I would say is I would say a brand is just a stronger hook for people to say, oh, this is Seek's stuff. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of like committing to an album, right? But all those albums are going to be put together with a brand name. And so now you have something very specific where it's like, you know, that separate Instagram can say clothing brand, right? That separate brand can have its own thing. So as a side note, for example, I didn't want to put all my products under jonphenom.co. I wanted it to have its own entity so that later if it grew and I have other of my colleagues that saying, hey, sell my course through your brand, or I want to offer a solution, then there's Clothing Brand Academy that has its own brand and its own entity, right? Yeah. So you can have this entity that's your clothing brand, and then you think of all the drops as different albums, right? And that's gonna, it's easier for people to cohesively say X brand, like, yo, this is X brand, this is that brand, and then it's easier magnet for people to go, oh, let me check out that brand, type you up online, and they see everything. Instagram, TikTok, and then your actual web shop. And then, but it's really the same thing. But the tough thing is making sure you have a good brand name, brand concept, so that you can keep making albums under that name.
Yeah. So, I want to read this comment, put it on the screen. Educated now just said, I'm glad Jon is discussing the business part, because everyone thinks just because they make custom shirts, they have to start a clothing brand when they don't know the basics of business.
Real talk, Cam, for real.
So I want to ask a question off of that. So in the beginnings, man, like I got my heat press, I got all my stuff, I can make my own shirts or whatever. I got my Photoshop, Affinity Designer, all that. So do I learn my equipment so I can put out my clothing, or if I don't have the equipment, do I find vendors, or do I learn that business first and then go on to designing, creating, and doing drops?
Oh gosh, that's a great question. Big shout out to Educated Natural for asking. And then Seek, you kind of flipped it a little bit. There's a couple answers there. So I run into a lot of people that are like, especially maybe this audience, right? And the ISS audience, where they're like, oh, I'm gonna put a print and a cure chamber in my garage. You know what I mean? Like I'm gonna have an electrician come and hook up so I got the right voltage and all of that. My thing is, so heat press I'm a huge fan of, right? I'm a huge fan of that. I'm a huge fan of super color transfers. So that to me is a great option for home production base. Even with them at one point, if your brand gets big enough, you're going to outsource to another vendor. I don't care unless you're like, I want to have the biggest screen printing or production shop and have a brand, that's a different conversation. But if you're starting your production solely for the purpose of having a brand, at one point you're going to outsource it, right? So if doing service work for other people is part of your side hustle, respect. I'm just about knowing specifically what your end goal is. Because what happens is you get into it and then the end goal blurs. You feel me? So like you get a press and you get a dryer chamber and you start making it, and then your son's high school is like, oh, we need PE shirts. You get that account and you're like, oh, we should get every middle school and high school in the county, and you get that. And then people start coming to you. You are not gonna, after 10 hours of printing, you are not gonna come back and say, oh, now let me print some new concepts for my t-shirt line.
Right.
You're not gonna do it. So it's gonna muddy what you're doing. And then you're gonna say, oh man, I'm too stuck in this production game because I'm taking this money. So if you're doing it purely for a brand, know that one day you're going to say the brand is doing well. There's proof of concept. Like I said earlier, there's proof of concept. So we want to expand. You don't want to spend all your time printing the shirts. You should go get a quote from the 10 other vendors around you. Find maybe not the cheapest, but the best one to go with, and then test. You know what I mean? Have the other ones have 3 of them on deck, but test, because everyone's going to make mistakes, but you should then always focus on what should I do to expand my brand. And that's a business owner, not a screen printer.
Yeah, man.
Jon, I'm actually in that boat right now. I've been doing customs. I service a lot of the schools, a lot of spirit wears, AAU teams. Also have dreams of starting a brand. I was actually pushed out the front door in the snow, 10 feet by Mr. Seek over here. He pushed me out. Him and Samuel Isaac, like, you gotta get your brand out.
Man.
I guess I need to ask this question first. What's some things that need to be done before dropping a website for that brand?
Good
like
idea.
the most technical thing.
I'm gonna come right back to it. It's easy for me. The social media.
Social media.
Because the website, if you think about it now, a website is just the cart. It's just a shopping cart. I mean, it depends. If you have a strategy where you're like, I'm gonna do a crazy good blog, like it's almost like a magazine, that's different, right? Now you're using social media for people to click on your articles and your interviews about that culture. And then your idea is then I'm gonna have my web shop just a click away in the same website. That's the only difference. Otherwise, I would say 95% of people are going to use their if they're using I was going to say Shopify, but if you're using Shopify or whatever it is, they're just going to use it as a web cart. And then the rest of the marketing happens on social media. So it's 10 times more important to get some sort of following on your Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, whatever you deem important. But right now, Instagram is really important, right? To get those followers up and get to people know what you're doing, so that when you do a drop, it's almost like you have the t-shirts, you're getting the production ready. It's like you just need a place for them to check out. Now, there's definitely some research. You want to make sure your site works really well. You want to think about your customer journey, least amount of clicks possible, all of the best practices for having an e-commerce shop. And then, if you do go with Shopify, there's a ton of different third-party applications that make it better, make it a better experience. Your remarketing, I mean, that's a whole nother podcast, but your remarketing efforts, when you have abandoned carts and all of that. I'm not saying you got to get into that before you launch, but it's right in there with the product is about ready to launch. I would put a lot of energy in your marketing and social media.
Okay.
Yeah, man.
Something else I wanted to ask you is, this is kind of off of it, but it's still part of it. How important is market research?
It's important that's a good question. So it's important in a couple ways. So when you say market research, there's a couple different brains.
So I'm actually talking about like going into Walmart, looking at some of the things that's trending, going to TJ Maxx, going to not Marshall, but some of the bigger name brand stores that's out there that people can go into.
So I'll respond from like a traditional creative director position. Trending is the first part of the process, and we do it for each season and each project, right? So if you're doing a collab with someone who's really big, then you're doing market research on where that persona lands in the landscape of the culture. And then for actual product, which is more of what you're talking about, it's how we begin. Like literally on the calendar would be going to malls. Yeah. Like going to malls to see what's actually like touch and feel the fabric and the trends that are happening in the shops. Now, as we know, retail has been hurting a lot lately. So a lot of research now is just online and seeing what happens online. So with that, we get our idea of what styles are available. Now, on my channel, people have like definitely kind of kicked back and say, oh, I don't want to look at other people's. I want to do my own thing. And what I do is original and all of that. And I believe that too. You should have that. But you should also, if you're like, look, let's say you have a line and the person who's backing you is a millionaire and he's backing everything.
Right.
If he says, hey, so I'm ready to fund your line and you're telling me you need, I don't know, $20,000. Mm-hmm. How do you know these designs are hot? If your answer, now I'm just speaking corporate, if you're an independent person and you end up being that 5%, that Virgil Abloh that just comes to the scene and I have a strong art direction and it's going to make it, you know what I mean? If you're like rude and you able to just do it, there respect. But for me, I don't have enough to say, I know my vision is definitely going to sell because I've been wrong before. But you want to intelligently answer an investor to say, this is why we think the line is going to be successful. Let me show you the research that we've done and what's going on in the trades and the trends.
Gotcha.
So, man, I want to double back a little bit. You had mentioned the print on demand stuff, printify and all that. Like, so you come from where you basically you had to get it out the mud, man. It was like selling stuff. You was like a rapper selling a tape out the trunk back in the day. So now seeing all these different processes, different print methods come over this last 20, 30 years you've been in the industry, how important is it or unimportant is like a Printful or one of them the print on demand companies? Do you think what's the place for those?
Oh man, I'm so glad you brought this up. It's game changing, right? It's game changing. Now, when I say that, it's like just the fact that a company exists that will remove all of the risk, right? Like all you got to do is come up with a design, right? And then you just kind of fill out the rest of the form and you can like own nothing, not even look at a heat press. Is insane. Now, I will say, if you try to put two hit locations, like you got a design on the front and a design on the shoulder, and you have a P&L, like a printed neck label, that mug on Printify or Printful or whoever, there's a lot of competitors now, that's going to be an expensive shirt.
Yeah.
You're making like you got to sell that shirt for like $60 for you to make a margin on that shirt. So it's not scalable for you. But the reason I say it is game changing is for some people, they could keep it to a 1-color, 2-color hit on the same shirt, you know, and actually price it to the point where they make a good profit. And there's tons of people making money on that. So it's a good solution for some people. And I know that other companies are going to follow in tow, right? Because I don't necessarily want to go with someone who's servicing literally 1 million people. I want a little bit more attention to detail, which that's what everyone's going to say, right? So there's more companies. The evolution is, and I saw it at ISS, is print companies are going to say, hey, we're going to start opening up to do fulfillment. Now, doing 3PL is another business. So you have to inspect what you expect if you're a brand and uses them. But to me, some of the implication of that is incredible. You know, like I'm so excited with how things are changing and the new companies, how tech is changing everything. It's making everything way more chaotic and exciting.
Yeah, man.
Y'all make sure y'all writing these gems down, soaking it in, this information, this free game, because this is going to change your life. And this is the steps that you take to get to there.
You guys are watching the Squad Creators Podcast. If you haven't subscribed, make sure you subscribe. My guys are doing some big things, good things. They're bringing you guys a lot of information, and you subscribing don't cost you nothing. So get it done. It's been your boy Stan Banks from T-Shirt Side Hustle. Peace.
John,
I expect that.
I know I threw it in there. What has been
a little bit?
What has been one of the biggest jobs that you've been assigned to since being in this industry?
Biggest jobs?
Yeah, like the all-time, like this is the mega. This is the the lottery winner. What? So let's see it.
God, I mean, I don't really have one. Like at all the companies that I worked for, I mean, prior to being a director, I would be the guy that, so like back in the days, these companies would sponsor people. So that would be like their stars, right? Like the pro skaters, pro surfers, pro snowboarders, pro wakeboarders. And whenever the company had said, hey, we want to do a specific drop for this person, I would be the person that handles the collaboration, basically did all the design work. And then that person is going to come up in the ad and say, hey, I designed this for a clothing company. But I've been a part of some really cool projects. But if I'm keeping it a buck with y'all, I mean, everything that's happening with social media has been amazing. So like I'm in the process of really getting down with and aligning with some partners right now, like other companies that want branded content. And so the challenge of, you know, like in the future, I'm going to be working with a lot of influencers, and I can't wait to get in there. Sort of like with the investment of technology and all of this, it's going to be really fun for me to flex with different influencers and say, hey, let's just do a quick capsule. Let's do a hat, a shirt, and like, a hoodie. And so there's I think for me the best is yet to come, because people haven't seen what I could do, and so I'm pitching a series where I work with influencers that have massive followings, and I kind of bring them into my world and say, hey, let's put together a quick drop, and you'll see all of that. That's what I'm looking forward to.
That's dope, man.
That is. That's
dope. Um, so I don't know why I haven't asked this. I should have asked this an hour ago. Streetwear. You do streetwear. I want to know what exactly is streetwear, and how have you seen it change over the years?
That's a good question. So depending on who you ask, like if you talk to like Bobby Hundreds at the Hundreds, he has tons of blog posts, and you could see his opinion on it. And for me, right, I mean, like, it's so funny when I was talking to Gary at T-shirt Help Desk. Like I said, we come from that era, right? And when I say that era, because I really believe streetwear is pretty much dead right now. There's brands that would be considered in the category of streetwear. So when I tag my videos, like back in the day, streetwear would be a little bit more in the titles. But it's just the landscape has changed so much. So I come from this golden era where brands were really doing so many amazing things, and the trade show would be like Disneyland. It was so fun. I mean, I knew all the designers at this company and that company, and it was like show and tell. It's like, hey, come look at my spring collection. It'd be like boom, 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 and they'd be like, hey, come over to my booth later. Like, I'm gonna show you my spring and fall, and we did a special drop. We're not showing anybody. It's a collab, blah blah blah. So that era was really great for me. Like, but I would say after the mortgage crunch, and then with the advancement of technology, just the basis of it sort of changed, right? Like, you have companies like let's say like Live Fit, right? What Randall is doing with Live Fit as an example, where he's one of my favorite case studies for athleisure, and he just popped at the right time. And a lot of his marketing early was just getting it on athletes that he had huge followings, and so his company would have shown in like a streetwear like Agenda or like Magic before, but now it's just so much smaller, and you can have a brand that just launches. And so a big part of my work now is just like influencers that are like, hey, I want to do more of a clothing line and less merch. I mean, I still get deals or conversations with established brands, but it's fewer and far between. And a lot of the new brands now, another one in athleisure, for example, is Gymshark, and they're very open about how they made their success. And it was all online. I don't even know if they ever went to a trade show. You know what I mean?
Wow.
Yeah.
So streetwear, like, I'm noticing, like, I watched have you seen that show, The Hype?
On Max, on HBO Max?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen some of it. I was a huge fan of them doing it, and so I did catch a little bit of it. Yeah, but tell me.
So with that, like, a lot of the streetwear on there was more like a lot of it, to me, lean towards like higher fashion, and so that's like one of the things I'm seeing changing with streetwear. Like, it used to be like a lot of streetwear used to be like the baggy clothes and all that, but now people are they've taken it to another level.
Right.
What is your outlook on that?
Yeah, great question. So I'm gonna reference it again, but part of what me and Gary at T-shirt Help Desk were talking about is like different categories of where people are at. Like, for example, I'll bring Virgil up again, rest in peace. But Virgil Abloh was like an absolute legend.
Yeah.
And he pulled streetwear into high fashion.
Mhm.
You can't. I mean, you can't do it. It's like the fashion version of like Pharrell or something. Like, it's just insane. Or like Quentin Tarantino directing. Like, he'll get throwback actors and like revive their whole careers by he'll imagine them in a movie. But it's interesting what Virgil did for the industry and uniting a lot of it. as for the hype, I mean, I'm a fan of them doing it. Like, so like, I'm just saying a lot of different people would see that and say that isn't streetwear, or like that's very much for me. I do consider it designer, right? So for example, when I would judge portfolios at like FITM, for example, at Fashion Institute of Design and Merchandising, I would tell them that my commentary is tainted, or the view of my commentary is from running very like casual, ready to wear men's and or women's brands, like kind of streetwear. It's kind of streetwear, right? Like skate shops, hip hop shops, like that sort of culture, right? And like I can use those same skills to do other things that are mass production, but not necessarily. I wouldn't consider myself like I would have not been good on that show. I've had a pitch to be on reality shows before, right? Like the guys at Vice, this is years ago, but the guys at Vice were really, they were trying to fly me out to New York and say, hey, we're doing it. Basically, it was the same concept of that show.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, no, I don't want to do it. They were really trying to sign me. And I was like, I don't want to do it because, I mean, it's not like, oh, I'm going to lose at the show and that sucks. Like, you know, there'd be some good press, you know, but as a producer, you know, they're trying to get like the real spicy moments. Those are the ones that people, ooh, let me see, like, you know, Jon Phenom going wild on me, crazy, you know, little Filipino boy crazy out here. But yeah, I mean, like, I agree with you. Like, I feel like some of that is more high fashion because if you bring that into like, you know, what I would consider whatever is streetwear or some of the brands I just mentioned, it just feels like different than the culture you're talking to.
Yeah, what's been something that you could look back on, let's say 10 years from now or 10 years prior to, that you may have wished that you spent more time on, or may have, you know, blossomed to a certain level and then just kind of pivoted off?
Oh gosh. Yeah, you know what? I think probably embracing my YouTube channel fully sooner. I mean, I feel like everybody says that, but I also do believe in time and place. So like it's almost right there with the regret question, and I have everyone's answer where it's like I don't really have a regret. Like things happen the way they're supposed to, but yeah, like I wish if I would have got like a jump or two on my YouTube a little bit sooner. But like I told you, like I was busy like being a director for other companies, and you know, at one point in time that was my dream job, so I got to do that dream job. But now it's very quickly these days are becoming what my dream job is, and I would have never imagined this. Like, look, my whole goal in my 20s was to launch a multi-million-dollar brand, put most of that money in real estate, and then see what happens next. The two things the two things out of the three didn't happen. So I was like, oh, what am I going to do now? And then I got hired as a creative director, and I was like, oh, this is cool. I'm like the coach for the team. This is cool. Like, let's do this. And it was really fun. I got to travel even more from it. And so that's been good. But everything that's come into fruition now, you couldn't even imagine it in like the 90s or even the early 2000s. And so getting up, being mentioned alongside John Santos, T-shirt help desk, T-shirt side hustle with Stan, like
you definitely earned your spot, man. We gotta. There's no way that we could just walk by and not say Jon Phenom. I mean, when I first started in this, your name just kept coming up everywhere, and I'm like, man, I gotta see who this is. Almost to warrant this, we gonna have to come back for a part 2 because we just barely touched the surface. I didn't get the cracker go all the way in like I want to.
Dope, dude. I appreciate that. You know what? Something came to mind, so definitely want to get this in before we close out, because I think it's important. And I was bubbling on that idea of you're saying like, so what are the basic things to launch? And I talked about Shopify, and one of the things that's really interesting that everyone needs to keep their eyes open for is there's new companies that are like changing the game and making a quick shortcut. You know what I'm saying? So again, I will revert to building your social media is everything, right? People need to know who you are before they can figure out what they want to buy from you, right? So getting a piece on like, hey, this is what we're about, or like we support this cause, or this is where people are like, oh, I really feel that. I really feel that. When these guys come out, I want to cop. I definitely want to support. But like for the brands now, like look at like there's a company, and I love what they're doing. Like a lot of the companies I align with now are like minority owned, and they can be game changers for tech. But remember everything I said with Shopify, that's a long like figuring out the third party apps and all of that. Like there's a lot going on there, and they're industry standard, right? At the moment they're industry standard, because if someone has an entire company that's just based on what your app does, then they're doing billions of dollars, and it's how a lot of business is done. But if you had a big following and you're ready to drop, there's a company that I love called Cash Drop, and they just attach Cash Drop. Cash Drop, yeah. And if it's big shout out to Cash Drop, like minority owned, and their story is this is what they start for the people, and so the application was used in the beginning a lot for vendors. So if you selling bacon wrapped hot dogs or you sell tacos out of a truck, you know it's like Square app or something like that, or like you guys know if you guys own your shop, PayPal and Stripe are going to take what is it 2.9% or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So these guys kind of put it together and they said, let's charge the client or the customer a service fee, but the vendor gets no fees. But they did it on the app where you could do it on social media, right? Because some of those companies don't have a website; they're just selling hot dogs on the side or whatever.
Yeah.
And so they've been robust in like going, oh, let's attack other places. And so now it's so crazy. And so I see what they're doing with fashion. So if you have the social media following, and then when you dropped, if you're like, dude, I didn't even look at Shopify and do all that, I want to drop, and then you just use them, there's no fees on your side, and you can sell with video and picture. So it's crazy. But like, yeah, that's a shortcut I didn't mention. But my bigger example is like, there's a lot of companies like this on the fringe that might show up tomorrow, and dude, that'll cut your curve. If you have a full-time job and you're doing it, that shortcut right there, like, oh, let me do this right now and this is gonna work.
Yeah, man. So we got a question from the Educated Natural. She asked, how important are trademarks for clothing brands?
All right, this is a hot topic on my channel, on probably anyone's channel that talks about it. So if I do all the work, you know, for the brand, to all the basic work. A lot of the structure initially is trying to figure out the concept, the idea, and then from the concept, the idea, and the story of the brand is how we unfold the story. So the marketing, I'm looking at 12 months in advance. Who are we collabing with? What kind of content are we putting out on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, et cetera, et cetera? And so if you're that serious about it, you should definitely trademark, right? There's some people, if you really only have like $2,000, because a trademark with an attorney is going to be like a grand. And so if you really only have $2,000, you can start without. But I would say the professional side of me says if you're going to really go at it with a brand, you should get a trademark. You should see who's using it, if someone is. And this goes along with making sure you find an original concept. I always go with a lawyer. And the story is the first trademark I ever tried to do, my boy convinced me I could do it on my own. Now, I'm sure there's a YouTube out there that really outlines what boxes to check and what to put. I was so frustrated when it came. This is months after. It might have been a year after they finally came back and said it wasn't approved, and they have all these reasons why it wasn't approved, and it was all legalese to me, and I don't know what I did wrong, but I paid the money. I guess I saved the money, but not really, because it's like I didn't get the trademark after. So in any case, that's my thoughts on trademark. You should do it. It should be built into your cost of doing business in the beginning.
Wow, Jon, this is absolutely wonderful. I'm gonna play this probably like 12 times.
Man.
Came through and blessed us with gems. Any futures? I know you got the classes going. Could you please shout them out? You know, so people can go visit and get some of those tech packs and acquire some knowledge that you have out here.
I mean, 100%. If this is the first time you ever heard of me, thank you, Mike and Seek, for letting us introduce to the audience. But go into Clothing Brand Academy and just get the free course. Get pre-launch. It's free, and it'll give you an idea of mindset and the way I kind of move forward and kind of teaching and educating and working with a brand. But everything's pretty much there on clothingbrandacademy.com, from consulting, which is, I consult with a lot of brands, right? From here, and just consulted with the first brand in Australia 2 weeks ago. But
Congratulations.
what's that now?
Congratulations.
Oh yeah. Like, it's crazy. People reach out from other countries, but my biggest audience for YouTube is US and the UK. But anyways, there's consulting, but probably some of my most popular products are some of the tech packs. But I have office documents. So when I talk about logistics of running a brand, the production doc bundle, I think it's golden. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't push it heavy. It's kind of funny, but all of the products on there are like real documents that I use on a day-to-day when I was directing a brand, or someone did, our production manager. So the tech packs. For the tech packs also, this has been a big buzz lately. I don't even push this, but when you buy the Illustrator version, it comes with a free Canva version of the tech pack.
Oh, that's dope.
Yeah. So if you just want to make your call outs very specific, when you buy the tech pack, I have a free Canva version, and right when you click that, you don't even need Adobe. So right when you click on it, you can start getting your designs together on it.
So can we get your social medias?
Sure. It's gonna be at Jon Phenom, JonPhenom. So John with no H. Jon Phenom on TikTok, on Instagram, and then on Facebook, it's CBM Clothing Brand Mentor. So CBM Jon Phenom on Facebook. Twitter's Jon Phenom. You find me.
Man,
if you Google me, you'll find me.
There's so much more I want to talk to you about. So I'm quick for asking people stuff. So when I got witnesses, can I get a witness that you'll come back for a part 2?
100%. Yeah.
Man, sure. Y'all heard it.
Yeah.
Man, this was an amazing interview. Great interview, man. Love what you had to share. But it's like, now we about to close out. I got so many more questions that's popping up in my head now.
Ain't that how that happens? Ain't that how it works?
It is.
So, man, John, again, thank you, brother. Thank you for what you do for the industry, man.
Yeah.
Thank you for blessing us with your presence, man. And like I told people this before, man, we met a lot of people at that ISS show, and you see these people on the internet. These people are really who they are on the internet in real life, man. Exactly. You know, like, we just literally rolled up on him and Gary from T-Shirt Help Desk, like, hey, I'm speaking on Mike, man. I'm like, come on, when you coming on my show? Like, and they was like, they didn't
stop playing and get on my show.
Yeah. And they were, neither one of them was like, man, get the hell out of here, man. You know, and then they sat and spoke with us, and man, it was a humbling situation, man. So, and I'm in contact with getting Gary a date as well. So we getting this heat, man. We bringing these legends, man. So,
and you gotta clip the video of us talking about him and say, you gotta be on the show now.
Yeah. That's funny. I'm a down
right in his inbox
right now too. I'm gonna cut up a clip and send it to him, man. Watch. that was funny, man. Thank you, brother.
Thank you. Thank everybody for tapping in. If you're catching this after the live, hit some comments, drop some gems or whatever emoji comes to mind, because we got straight fire dropped on us today. Next week, we're gonna be doing a couple of reviews, so y'all be on the lookout for that. And we'll be back.
This will be replayed later today.
Later
because we came out early, so we're gonna replay it at 7.
Hey, I appreciate y'all. If y'all are watching on the replay, also, I did a hard launch for my TikTok content. So also, please follow me on that content on TikTok at Jon Phenom. But Mike, Seek, I appreciate y'all for doing this, and I look forward to part 2.
Yes, man, right on. Thank you.
Thank you.
And we'll see y'all next week.